We condemn the horrific killing of 2 Israeli brothers near Nablus, and the killing today of an Israeli near Jericho, who we understand was also an American citizen. We express our deepest condolences to all of the victims' families and their loved ones. We also condemn the wide-scale, indiscriminate violence by settlers against Palestinian civilians following the killing. The attacks reportedly led to the death of 1 Palestinian man, more than 300 residents injured, 4 seriously, and the torching of an estimated 30 Palestinian homes and cars. These actions are completely unacceptable. The United States extends its deepest condolences to those affected by this violence. We appreciate Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Herzog's statements calling for a cessation of vigilante violence. We expect the Israeli government to ensure full accountability and legal prosecution of those responsible for these attacks, in addition to compensation for the lost homes and property. Accountability and justice should be pursued with equal rigor in all cases of extremist violence, and equal resources dedicated to prevent such attacks and bring those responsible to justice. These events underscore the fragility of the situation in the West Bank and the urgent need for increased cooperation to prevent further violence. That is exactly why the United States joined Israel, the Palestinians, Jordan, and Egypt in Aqaba. It is imperative that Israel and the Palestinians work together to de-escalate tensions and to restore calm. The United States and our regional partners will continue to work with the parties to advance the commitments made in Aqaba, and in the meantime, we call on everyone.
So, what happens when 5 countries get together and America is there to oversee things? Does that mean a free and open discussion, or is that America trying to strong-arm everybody? Fucking bullshit.
To refrain from actions and rhetoric that further inflame tensions. As we've said repeatedly, Israelis and Palestinians equally deserve to live in safety and security. With that, happy to turn your question. So,
pick up on that.
Do you actually believe that Palestinians and Israelis deserve to live equally? Because I don't see America ever pulling that procedure out. I gotta check something. I don't ever see that.
So the Israelis arrested a handful of these vigilantes and then have released most of them. So I'm wondering if you're satisfied with the Israeli response to that settler violence.
There's an ongoing investigation. We wouldn't want to get ahead of the investigation, but we think the equal administration of justice is important. It's important in every context around the world. It's important in this context. We want to see full accountability and legal prosecution of those responsible for these attacks and for compensation for those who lost property or were otherwise affected. And in the pursuit of that accountability and justice, we believe it should be pursued with equal rigor in all cases of extremist violence. And with that in mind, we believe there should be equal resources dedicated to the pursuit of that justice. Yes.
I noticed in your tweet yesterday you referred to the shooting in which 2 Israelis were killed as a terror attack or terrorism, whereas the settler violence was separated. Was that deliberate? And if yes, how do you differentiate or decide when to use the word terrorism versus when not to?
I think it's best not to parse and to go into definitions from the podium. We are condemning the extremist violence that we've seen over the past couple days. We issued a very strong condemnation of the killing of the Israelis that we've seen over the weekend. We've issued today a very strong condemnation of the violence that's resulted in the death of Palestinians and the destruction of property. In all of these cases, in all cases of extremist violence, we think it's important that there be accountability, that there be justice, equal justice under the law. Yes, Jim.
But you are willing to call Palestinians terrorists, you're never willing to call Israelis terrorists. That's a pretty big fucking difference. That is a massive difference in the scale of how they look at things.
Thank you. I have a quick question.
Anything else before we leave the region? Okay, sure.
I just wonder if any of this undermines the Aqaba statement. I mean, or do you think that statement is really alive still?
Well, the Aqaba statement is important in and of itself. It was a historic meeting between Israelis and Palestinians. Of course, senior U.S. officials were there, our Egyptian partners were there, our Jordanian partners were there, and the resulting communique and the commitments that Israelis and Palestinians made to one another, I think, speak for themselves. That's important, but what is equally, if not far more, is the implementation, is the follow-through. And that's where we want to see Israelis and Palestinians fulfill the commitments that they have made to one another in Aqaba. Aqaba set out a path for both sides to de-escalate tensions and over the longer term to, we hope, build additional levels of trust between Israelis and Palestinians. But this is not a path that the United States or any other country in the region can itself walk down. This is a path that Israelis and Palestinians laid out for themselves, for one another. We hope, we expect that Israelis and Palestinians will themselves walk down that path, that practically speaking, they will take the steps that they've committed to and that will be necessary to de-escalate tensions. The de-escalation of tensions, especially now, is imperative. It was imperative prior to this weekend. It is even more important now, given that the violence that we've seen over the weekend, and now we have firm commitments from both sides and a clear roadmap from both sides that we think and we hope can lead to this de-escalation of tension that we so urgently need.
Will there be any other steps or follow-up steps after the announcement yesterday or the declaration, and what role did the U.S. play in convening this meeting?
Well, the United States played the role that we typically do play. We played the role as a partner. We helped bring the parties together. We're obviously grateful to our other partners in this, Egypt and Jordan, for the critical role that they've played, but we were there for the discussions. We supported the discussions. We welcomed the agreements that resulted from the discussions between Israelis and Palestinians and the other parties. As to the next steps, the most important next steps is follow-through. is to see to it that Israelis and Palestinians adhere to the commitments that they made to one another in Aqaba. They live up to the pledges that they have made to one another, but also importantly to the world. There is an agreement that emerged yesterday. It's important that it emerged publicly because the entire world is now able to see what the parties agreed to, and the entire world will be able to determine for themselves whether there is broad adherence to what was agreed to in Aqaba. That's certainly something we want to see because we think the discussions that took place over the weekend and the resulting communique do put a path forward for Israelis and Palestinians to do what is precisely necessary, and that is to engage in de-escalation, to de-escalate tensions, and over the longer term, we hope to build trust. Anything else on the Middle East?
In the longer term.
The agenda yesterday in the briefing were
Yesterday's agenda was fairly narrow in that it was aimed at de-escalation. We think the communique that emerged from this session was a concrete manifestation of the desire of the parties represented at Aqaba to see de-escalation. This is not about setting out an entire path forward to a negotiated two-state solution. That is something we still believe in, of course. But what is most urgent, what's most imperative at the moment, is that the parties themselves move forward with these steps that will, in the first instance, de-escalate tensions. Yes, go ahead.
Can you do something to make it imperative, since it's been proven that the two parties were not able to do what you would like to see happening in terms of de-escalation and so on? So do you have anything to make it imperative?
Well, the parties in much of the world recognize that it is an imperative. I only speak for the United States of America, and we have consistently spoken of the importance of de-escalation. But the fact that Israelis and Palestinians, not to mention Egyptians and Jordanians, gathered in Aqaba over the weekend, we hope, is a very concrete manifestation of the recognition on the part of the two parties, but also on the part of two very important regional players, that there needs to be de-escalation, that the imperative for de-escalation is an urgent one. The fact that the parties gathered, the fact that
Watching him say nothing is so fun, but knowing, the U.S.'s side on this, knowing that the U.S. absolutely gives and gives and gives to Israel aid, financial, weapons, sells weapons, just all the stuff that we do for Israel. Israel is essentially a satellite of our military, and then we're actually concerned about Palestine. It's fucking ridiculous or funny, or I don't know. It's something, right? Like, it's definitely something.
that the two parties, in this case, were able to make commitments to one another that, again, put out that path towards de-escalation, we think is reflective of the fact that the parties themselves recognize the need to de-escalate. Again, however, what is most important is not the piece of paper that emerged. It is the follow-through. It is the test of whether the parties will be in a position to live up to the commitments that they have made to one another, that they have made to their regional neighbors, and that the United States was on the ground to witness. We certainly hope and expect that's the case. Yes.
The Israeli press is already reporting that some members of Netanyahu's government are saying that there will be no settlement freeze. Some of these members have been deemed outright fascistic. They praised Baruch Goldstein, who massacred Palestinians. Isn't it imperative to address what they represent and what they are at this point?
None of these members are the Prime Minister of Israel.
Oh my God! But they represent the majority of the new cabinet, dude. It does.
We work directly with the Prime Minister, with his team, with our direct counterparts.
But I mean, yeah, intellectual. I mean, the amount of stuff we give them is insane, and to act like it's, a far cry from the norm is bullshit. It's straight bullshit.
You're going to, and this applies to governments around the world, judge governments on their actions. We think it is important that Palestinians live up to the commitments they made at Aqaba. We think it's important that Israelis live up to
They always say they always say the Palestinians like they're always the culprits. I don't know if it's here or another segment that he talks about. He talks about terrorism. I think it's a couple days from now. We'll get there, I guess. Jesus.
Frida Parsi of the Quincy Institute just had a piece charging that the Biden administration has effectively given Israel a green light to possibly attack Iran. Is the administration in any way, shape, or form tacitly giving Israel a green light to attack Iran, and what would the administration response be to such an attack?
I'm happy to come back to that, but before we move on to Iran, anything else on Israel?
Yeah,
We need to move around.
Is your reading of that Aqaba statement a settlement freeze? Because I think Bibi Netanyahu also said that it was not a settlement freeze.
The statement that was issued yesterday is one that the rest of the world can read. We think the statement speaks for itself. The Israelis agree not to discuss any new settlements for at least 4 months, and not to discuss authorization
it does
any
not.
posts, for at least 6 months. Just as we expect the Palestinians to live up to their commitments, we expect the Israelis to do the same. Anything else? Yes, go ahead. One final question.
Palestinian commitments. What are those Palestinian commitments?
The statement at Aqaba is a document that the entire world can see for themselves.
It doesn't mention what Palestinian commitments are, but
This is a communique that was signed onto by the parties themselves, so we'll refer you to that statement. Jenny, I know I called on you, and then we'll come back to Iran. We'll take a couple more questions on Israel. Go ahead.
there is two reports. One of them says they agree to hold discussion on building more settlement, and the other one says they agree to stop construction. Which one is, do you think, the true one, the real one?
The real one is the statement that was issued yesterday. This was a statement that was signed onto by the parties that you can read for yourself. We issued it from here, from the State Department. There was a statement from the White House yesterday welcoming the communique. That was agreed to at Aqaba. That's the one that we stand behind and that we hope and expect the parties will fulfill when it comes to their commitments. Yes, final questions?
Yeah, I asked you about apparent Israeli violations of the Arms Export Act a week or two ago, and you said you weren't familiar with the laws that would cut off funding to any state that was a nuclear proliferator. Do you have anything further on that?
I believe the team provided you some additional backgrounds on that. As in the past, we're just not in a position to comment specifically on this. We refer you any questions you may have on this program.
How do you expect to have any credibility on this subject when you can't even acknowledge that Israel has a nuclear weapons arsenal?
Haha, that was the best question I think of the week. We'll give this the "Fuck You Ned Price of the Week" award.
Again, I just don't have anything to offer on this. We refer any questions to the Israeli government as a practice when it comes to just about any country, certainly any partner. We don't speak in detail to...
Certainly any partner. You definitely talk about other people's nuclear capabilities when they're an enemy, but when they're a partner, we don't talk about their nuclear capabilities. We don't talk about that.
To the capabilities, to the programs of partners around the world, just as we would expect they would not speak to ours.
Yeah, so we don't talk about our partners. We spread propaganda about our enemies, but we don't talk about our partners.
You're referring to the Israeli government about their own nuclear program. About their own nuclear program. You can't acknowledge that Israel has a nuclear weapons
One
program.
is China, one is North Korea.
Haha, you can't. He's like, you can't recognize it. He's like, I'm not even gonna recognize you talking to me right now. So yeah, let's jump ahead. We can't stick up all day on one thing, right? Moving on.
Can I ask, since it's back in the news, COVID origins, is this something you brought up with the Chinese, or is it something the building is looking
COVID
into?
origins.
The Energy Department's assessment that came out this week.
It won't surprise you to hear I don't have any comment on purportedly classified assessments that may have been put forward. The National Security Advisor, others have spoken to this in recent days. It boils down to the fact that there are a variety of views within the intelligence community. There are some elements within the intelligence community that have reached conclusions on one side. There are others that have come to conclusions on
the other side.
There are a number of intelligence community agencies that have put forward an assessment that essentially makes clear they don't have enough information to conclude one way or another. But to your question, we have repeatedly raised the underlying question with our PRC counterparts. For more than 2 years now, the PRC has been blocking from the beginning international investigators and members of the global health community from accessing information that they need to understand the origins of COVID-19. This is about the question of the origins of COVID-19, but just as importantly, if not even more importantly in some respects, it is about preparing the world to withstand and ultimately to prevent another global pandemic. In order to prevent a future pandemic, we need to fully understand the one we're still emerging from. The president and others have direct...
He warns, like, in the 3 or 4 press briefings, three press briefings this week, he warns of a future pandemic almost every day. He warns, like, we gotta get ready for this next pandemic. They're gonna start beating that drum, like, next pandemic, and and they're gonna start unloading a new wave of technology mandates on us or whatever.
To do all we can to get to the bottom of the origins of COVID-19, again, to garner a better understanding of how we can prepare ourselves to confront future pandemics. This is something that we have raised with the PRC repeatedly because it matters to the American people, it matters to people around the world, and it should be of concern to the people of China, who have also suffered tremendously from this current pandemic. Dylan?
Yeah, and that's what Burns is warning the ambassador to China that China's going to have to be more honest about what happened 3 years ago in Wuhan for you to continue working together productively. Do you have any comment on that? Anything to add to that? I mean, is there anything specifically you're doing other than just continuing to ask China to be more transparent? Because obviously they're not doing that. So
obviously
it
not
is
doing that.
Essentially what I just said, Dylan. We believe in the importance of doing all we can to understand the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic, both in the context of the pandemic we're still emerging from, but also to better prepare ourselves for any future pandemics that are to come. We're doing a couple things. We are, and the president has tasked the intelligence community now to prepare assessments, now multiple rounds of assessments on the origins of COVID-19. And so that is an effort that is in-house, as it were. The intelligence community and all of its constituents, departments, and agencies are scouring the information that's available to them to put together assessments about the most probable origins of this. When it comes to those assessments, there have been some agencies within the intelligence community that have come down on one side, others have come down on another, and others have reported that there's insufficient evidence to come to any firm conclusion at the moment. As within the intelligence assessment, we are always incorporating new information, new facts, new details from every source of
on,
information
man.
available to the U.S. government. Some of that is open source information available to everyone. Some of that is information that is available only to the U.S. government, and we'll continue to do that. The other part of this is continuing to impress upon the PRC the importance of transparency, and this is an issue that we've been clear and candid with the PRC on from our earliest engagements at senior levels with the PRC. The president has raised this, the secretary has raised this, the national security advisor has raised this. It's been raised repeatedly and consistently at various levels because it is that important to us. Now, there are other multilateral institutions like the WHO that also have a role in this. Unfortunately, the PRC has been blocking from the very beginning the ability of international investigators and members of the global health community from accessing the information that they would need to form their own conclusions, to come to their own judgments. But we will keep pursuing all of these avenues, knowing that yes, it's important in the context of COVID-19 and the importance of in the context of this particular pandemic, but it's also important in the context of preventing and being able to respond to a future pandemic should one emerge.
Just to be a little more specific, though,
Future pandemic should one emerge. I feel like y'all getting ready for another pandemic.
you said they're going to have to be more honest. So is there going to be any consequence at any point for them not being honest? Because you said you've been raising this issue, and you have been raising the issue, but there's just been no movement whatsoever from them, despite how much you're raising it.
Well, across the board, Dylan, regardless of what the issue is, we typically don't get ahead of policy responses before they are announced.
Okay.
But we are going to do what is most effective, what's most effective to protect the American people, to protect people around the world from the emergence of future pandemics. In the first instance, we believe international cooperation is the most important element. It's why this department has invested so much in something we call the Global Action Plan, bringing together dozens of countries from around the world to respond to the current pandemic, but also to build up the infrastructure that will allow the international community to respond much more effectively should, God forbid, another pandemic emerge. There are conversations and steps that we're taking with the World Health Organization. There are conversations and steps that we're taking with United.
Man, again, I'm telling you, he says another pandemic, the next pandemic, like a half dozen times this day, but he says it every day. Like, I don't think we're going to watch it every day, but he says it every day this week. It is a drum beat that they're going to start beating. Watch it. Just watch. Pretty soon they're going to start beating that drum. Next pandemic, next pandemic, next pandemic, next pandemic. And then they're going to hit us with a wave of fucking, I don't know, personal ID something or another, or take away our rights and somehow. Just watch.
More broadly. And yes, there are conversations that we're having with the PRC, chiefly because transnational threats, like the threat of a pandemic, whether it's COVID-19 or anything else, doesn't adhere to borders. It doesn't respect international borders or lines on a map. So it's important for our own sake, it's important for the sake of people around the world, it's important for the sake of the Chinese people that we are doing all we can through every conceivable forum that is available to us to take steps now, not only to put an end to this pandemic, but to better prepare ourselves should another one emerge. Anything else on China? Go ahead.
Should another one emerge, just watch out.
Going back to Russia, China, can you please confirm the reports that PRC is planning providing drones, in particular, to Russia to use in Ukraine?
Alex, at this point, I am just going to have to reiterate what we said. We have concerns that the PRC continues to consider the provision of lethal support to Russia for use against Ukraine. We haven't defined with any more granularity or detail what that lethal support could be, but in some ways, that's a question that is much less important than the strategic one we're talking about, the question of whether or not the PRC moves forward with providing lethal assistance. The provision of any lethal assistance by the PRC to Russia for use in Ukraine would be a step with potentially dire and tragic implications for, in the first instance, the people of Ukraine, but it would be a very clear signal to countries around the world of the hollowness of the PRC's claims that it is not taking a side in this war. We believe that countries around the world should and must take a side, but even if the PRC wants the world to believe they're not taking a side, they will have to answer the question of why then they would provide lethal assistance. The same question that countries are asking about.
Lethal assistance, lethal aid. Oh, their fucking vocab is lethally mentally destructive. Lethally destructive. I don't know. There's something there though, right? There's a there there. There's not no there there. There's definitely a there there.
About why the PRC is providing other forms of assistance to Russia: economic assistance, diplomatic assistance, political assistance, and rhetorical support as well. These are all questions that a country that professes to be neutral in this brutal war of aggression, this brutal territorial conquest, should have to answer.
Given that, it's my understanding that it's your position that China has no credibility in inserting itself as a peacemaker.
Well, look, I don't want to be categorical about it because there are countries around the world that have leverage with Russia that we just don't have. It is undeniable.
Oh my god, it's undeniable that you're gonna bounce around the questions for a little longer, huh? Let's move on. Oh, this is perfect. All right. Yes.
A close look at sanctions and sanctions enforcement. It's an iterative element. It's an iterative activity in which we engage. We are constantly looking at our sanctions. We are regularly rolling out new sanctions in response to information that becomes available to us as we see trend lines, as we see the actions of entities and actors around the world. In fact, you saw a number of those, to put it mildly, rolled out on Friday, but we're also always working with countries around the world on the question of sanctions enforcement. That is to say, not new sanctions, but working with allies and partners to see to it that we are all enforcing the sanctions that we have collectively put on the books. In some cases, we're doing that to make sure that there's not over-compliance, especially when it comes to the flow of humanitarian goods and humanitarian services, and we've been very clear about that when it comes to food and fertilizer emanating from Russia. But in some cases, we are working on sanctions enforcement to make sure that everyone is living up to the commitments that we have made using our domestic authorities or that blocks of countries have made collectively.
Okay, so he's saying that they actually pay attention to what their sanctions do. If the Americas actually paying attention to what their sanctions do, that means they know their sanctions are killing poor people. They know their sanctions are doing nothing to the rich oligarchs that control the countries that they sanction. And they know the horrible things they're doing. That's actually worse. That's actually a lot worse, that you know that your sanctions are killing people. Actually, that makes you way more of a criminal than we thought before, Ned. That's really bad, actually. White House 3-1. All right, let's drill through the White House real quick, huh? That's actually really bad, Ned. Really bad. Bad on you. Karine!
Hi, good afternoon, everybody.
Oh, you're not gonna do your stupid, sorry it has been a while, or hey, Monday stupid days, or sorry I didn't see you Monday, I hate you. Nothing stupid like that? No, you didn't. Okay, so let's just move on. Let's get to the only good thing we think.
Thanks, Karine. There's a bipartisan rail safety bill that was introduced or proposed today in the Senate. Senator Majority Leader Chuck Schumer endorsed the brought out the proposal. It's the White House seen it. It's the White House supported in the wake of these Palestinian disasters.
We're glad to see bipartisan support. This is something that Secretary Pete has been calling for, and this is clearly to bring forward several rail safety measures, which is incredibly important. The bill would increase the maximum fines for safety violations. It would strengthen rules governing trains carrying hazardous materials. It will accelerate the timeline for phasing in safer tank cars and establish a permanent requirement for two-person train cars. So this is a good first step, and we welcome it. We encourage Republicans and Democrats to continue to work together to advance these common sense rail safety measures, and it's an important first step, and we welcome it.
We welcome it. We're glad it's bipartisan. How come we didn't do anything when these safety measures were asked by the railroad workers in their strike proposal, and you guys shut them down and blocked them from a strike? When the union wanted not just 7 days paid sick leave, which seems like just standard human things, they also wanted that safety hazard taken care of. But it took massive accidents for it to happen. It took lives being lost. It did not take the basic workers' rights, the workers' understanding of their own jobs, the workers' seeing of the situations. You didn't trust the workers. You had to let shit actually happen and people die. This is on Democrats' hands for blocking that strike. Wow! Fuck you, lady. Actually, that's even worth, that's actually worth clipping even. Let's make sure we get a good clip of that, right guys? Hopefully we'll get a good clip of that, because, yeah, no, that's not cool, lady. Not cool. Sorry, Karine. Not happy about that. Alright. So, that's all we have to say about that day. What are we going to go on to? What did I pick? You? Oh, I picked you again. Yay. Right? That's what I'm saying, yo. Alright, Ned. To what extent the U.S. is concerned about the escalation of tension...
The escalation of tension
between Israelis and Palestinians and between the Israelis themselves. I'm doing alright today. It's just too fucking hot down here, man. It hasn't gone below 75. Like, it's 77, 78 degrees at night and 85, 88 at night during the day, and it's just too hot. It's too hot in Florida right now. Ugh.
Israelis and Palestinians, and between the Israelis themselves.
So, Michelle, we have expressed a tremendous amount of concern in recent days. As you know, we have seen Far too much violence, far too much bloodshed. We have roundly condemned and rejected the terrorist attacks that Israel has suffered in recent days. Of course, on Monday, we noted the death of a dual U.S.-Israeli citizen who was killed outside Jericho in the latest terrorist attack that we forcefully condemn. In recent days, we've also seen violence from settlers in the West Bank.
So again, we're making this look like it's Israel's, Israel's getting attacked, Palestine's the bad guy, and now we're seeing some settler violence. Now it's getting a little out of control. If you watch these, no, hold on. There's been like 60 Palestinians killed this year. It's been one of the worst years in a very long time, and they're getting murdered. Press and people with like first aid, like I don't know what you call that, medic symbols on them. These are the people who are getting attacked, and this is not okay. And just saying both sides are doing bad, there's a lot of violence come one way on this one, and it's the side that we give weapons to, and it's the side that we give money to.
Violence that has resulted in the loss of life, the destruction of property, and only exacerbated the tensions that we've spoken to a great deal in recent days. All of this comes in the context of the agreement between the parties that was reached in Aqaba, Jordan over the weekend. That is an agreement that is important in and of itself, in that the parties sat down together, Israelis and Palestinians, together with their Americans, Egyptian, and Jordanian counterparts.
An American, an Egyptian, and a Jordanian walk in. Who's the asshole? Ba-dum-bum. The American, of course. Come on.
To devise a way forward. But again, what is most important is implementation of what resulted from Aqaba, to see to it that the parties themselves actually fulfill the commitments they have made to one another, the commitments that they made in that broader context. We're continuing to watch that very closely. We're continuing to urge the parties to take steps that concretely result in de-escalation, that serve to ease the tensions that have only escalated in some ways in recent days. It's important that the parties take these steps, only the parties themselves.
I'm not sure which one he rehearsed, so he went with both. Some ways these days. Oh, fucking great.
Are the ones who can embark on these steps.
Meanwhile, Israeli finance minister called the Israeli government to wipe out Hawara village, the Palestinian village. Do you have any comment on that?
I want to be very clear about this. These comments were irresponsible, they were repugnant, they were disgusting, and just as we condemn Palestinian incitement to violence, we condemn these provocative remarks that also amount to incitement to violence. We call on Prime Minister Netanyahu and other senior Israeli officials to publicly and clearly reject and disavow these comments. We condemn, as we have consistently, terrorism and extremism in all of its forms, and we can.
Except for if it's done to Palestinians, then we're like, I mean, it's not terrorism. If it's the Palestinians, it's terrorism for sure. If it's Israelis, it's like, it's just settlers getting unrest. It's just,
Continue to urge that there be equal measures of accountability for extremist actions, regardless of the background of the perpetrators or the victims. We've already noted our concern, as I did just a moment ago, about the wide-scale, indiscriminate violence by settlers against Palestinian civilians in this very town, in Hawara, that led to the death of one Palestinian man, more than 300 residents injured, 4 seriously, and the torching of an estimated of numerous Palestinian homes and cars. It is imperative, in some ways now more than ever, that Israelis and Palestinians work together, again, to de-escalate these tensions and to restore the calm that both Israelis and Palestinians deserve.
I have two more on Israel. 2 Israeli officials are coming next week to Washington to meet the White House officials and Secretary Blinken to discuss Iran. Can you confirm that, and do you have anything new to say regarding the U.S. strategy towards Iran?
So I don't have
anything to say. I don't have anything to say. That's what we're going to get for like the next, dozen things. Oh, because that's what he likes to say. I don't have anything to say. Let's move ahead. 5250. I don't have anything to say. Oh, I know. He condemns. We have the most powerful nation. We give tons of money to Israel. You can condemn all you want, dude, but you're not actually doing anything to leverage authority or power, so Yeah, just keep saying.
Whole application process, that was the last hurdle on the path to becoming a NATO member. And the United States, from that podium, has been insisting that Sweden and Finland become NATO members at the same time simultaneously. But Ankara has made their intentions known that they might actually split up that process and they might approve Finland before Sweden. Are you considering dropping that insistence, or are you going to be welcoming Finland if they actually become NATO members before Sweden?
So 2 points. First, we welcome the fact that Finland's parliament voted by a large majority to approve Finland's accession to NATO. We also welcome the announcement of talks between Turkey, Sweden, and Finland regarding Sweden and Finland's NATO membership bids. You've heard from me extensively the view on the part of the United States that Finland and Sweden are both ready to be NATO members, that their accession to the world's leading defensive alliance would not only strengthen European security, it would strengthen security across the Euro-Atlantic region as well. These are advanced democracies with capable militaries with whom our own military has exercised over the course of many decades now.
Oh, have we exercised with them? Like, I don't know, blowing up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline? Something like that? We'll talk about that at the end of the stream. Seriously, we've exercised with them right after the Nord Stream that you're denying? Seriously? That's so fucking funny to me. Seriously, that is so funny to me.
What is important to us, first and foremost, is that Finland and Sweden are swiftly approved as NATO members. It is, of course, the responsibility of each member of the alliance to approve that, to take the steps within their own national systems, within our system. You've seen the executive branch, but also the U.S. Congress act swiftly and decisively to move along the applications of Finland and Sweden, so that now there are very few steps left for Finland and Sweden to become NATO members.
Yeah, we are rushing that in. We want that to happen so fast, so hard. Don't worry about it. We are pushing the hell out of it. Oh, that's what we're worried about, yo. That's what we're worried about.
This ultimately is not a question for the United States. If it were a question for the United States, we would like to see Finland and Sweden admitted today, tomorrow, together. Ultimately, this is a question for the alliance. It is a question for Turkey.
The alliance. He keeps saying the alliance. Doesn't that give you like little chills, like we're in the freaking the beginning of like a really bad movie, and shit's about to go down? Like, he's about to join the alliance, and once they join the alliance, the warpath can begin. Dun 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 dun. Like, he keeps saying this shit. It's a little scary. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little creeped out by it. What did I have next? Oh, Karine. Yay, Karine again. No, I kid. 3-2. Karine, you. Go to 1926. Oh, we're not going to start out with Karine. I apologize. That's a fake out. I apologize. I just assumed because we go on there, we're going to see Karine's face, but that's right. She doesn't come in until later.
Bill requiring the DNI to declassify the COVID origins intel passed the Senate. If it passes the House too.
Ah, yes, COVID origins. We heard it from Ned. Let's hear it from these guys.
Would President Biden sign it?
I won't get ahead of the president's decision-making, Peter, but look, a couple of things to keep in mind. Right after taking office, the president declassified and made public the DNI's initial findings here about the source of COVID. So he already very swiftly and unilaterally put information out there. That's one. Two, the intelligence community continues to assess the origins of COVID. I know I've seen press reporting about some preliminary findings of a classified nature, but there's still no consensus. And that's why the president has directed the team to stay at the work, because he wants to know. He wants to know as best we can know what the origins were so that we can work to better prevent a future pandemic.
But we've got the FBI director saying most likely a potential lab incident in Wuhan. If a foreign country came to the United States and killed 1.1 million Americans with guns, would the president just let that slide?
Okay, so that's why you're ridiculous, Fox News. You had a proper line of questioning. You had a line of questioning that you could push the envelope on, and then you ask a stupid fucking analogy like that. That completely ruins your credibility. You could have pushed that in so many better directions. And what you did was bullshit. What you did was lazy, bad reporting. It's gotcha question bullshit journalism. And you could have actually phrased, like, I hope this guy's eye roll. Oh man, I didn't even realize that when I was listening to it. Check the guy in the bottom corner. Can you see his eye roll? Oh, it's fantastic.
Nobody's letting anything slide. That's why the president wants the intelligence community to
Ooh,
work
I
so
want to make
hard
sure he does a full eye roll. Hold on.
Most likely a potential lab incident in Wuhan. If a foreign country came to the United States and killed 1.1 million Americans with guns, would the president just let that slide?
Nobody's letting anything slide. That's why the president wants the intelligence community
had a little
to work
bit
so
of a
hard
grin.
to get to, hopefully, to
A
get
little bit.
to some answers that that we can rely on. Right now, there's just no consensus. It's hard to take a look at what the president has done here in terms of declassifying and making public information already, in terms of the constant and consistent briefings to members of Congress in a classified and unclassified setting in just recent weeks on what the origins of COVID were, and on his tasking again to the intelligence community to keep at that work, and come away from that thinking that he's not taking this seriously.
As many as 900 schoolgirls appear to have been poisoned in Iran.
Let's go on to propaganda. 900 schoolgirls have been poisoned in Iran. That's propaganda, probably. I'm going to go ahead and say that you can point to a U.S. story where thousands of people have been poisoned in schools, like, I don't know, in Detroit and Flint and Baltimore and St. Louis. And, I don't know, there's so many cities right now that you can point to as far as all the horrible things we do. Hold on, I think I'm supposed to go a few more seconds.
Does the U.S. have any information about what could be behind those poisonings? And if it was the government, is that something that could prompt American sanctions?
It's deeply concerning news.
It is deeply concerning news. Why? Like, you think we can sanction Iran even more? You think there's any way that we could push Iran further into sanctions? That's ridiculous. We've got them pretty much maxed out. There's no more sanctions. I can't pull over any further. I'm already pulled over. You've already sanctioned him. You can't sanction him anymore. He's already sanctioned. They've already sanctioned as much as you can. Jesus, come on, man. Come on. That's just ridiculous. You can't sanction them anymore. They're already sanctioned. Oh, you're so funny. I think I like you. Let's move a little further ahead. We got a little bit more from this clown of a John. Clown on town.
Thank you, John. I have two questions. What is the President Biden?
Ah, Janet. Right? No, shit. Nikki? Damn it, what's her name? Ah, shit. Janet. It's Janet. She's one of our favorites from the DOS. She's absolutely one of our favorites from the DOS. So let's listen to her question, this dork of a dork.
Reactions about.
And I know she's a little bit hard to understand. That's why that's literally why I put the CC on today. Was this question? What is Biden's reactions about North Korea?
North Korea's recently
Recent Hwasong ICBM launching.
15 ICBM launching and large rocket launchers. Do you have any comment on that?
We have reacted in real time to each and every one, Janie. I think you know that. And
we've reacted in real time. I think you know that. That was the most hillbilly, like, knee-jerk reaction I've seen him have.
In response to the most recent ones, we conducted some exercises with our OK allies. We're continuing to stay vigilant on and around the peninsula. And of course, we publicly condemned these launches, as had our UN colleagues.
Ukraine.
And Ukraine.
Has the arms aid from South Korea. Does the United States want South Korea to provide weapons other than ammunition to Ukraine?
We want all nations to support Ukraine to the best.
We want everybody to give weapons to Ukraine. Everybody. Put weapons into Ukraine so we can fight Russia.
That they can. We don't want any nation to help Russia kill more Ukrainians.
Nobody give weapons to Russia. Everybody give weapons to Ukraine. Let's get this war to the best of our ability, dead to the last Ukrainian. Come on, man.
But it's a sovereign decision. Each nation has to. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm waiting. I'm like.
No. I forgot my train of thought. These are sovereign decisions, and we want every nation to act in accordance with what they believe they can handle from their own national security perspective. The South Koreans have already been very helpful. They've been attending these Ukraine conduct defense groups, and we appreciate that. And we're very grateful for that. So no, I haven't got much rhythm today.
John, given what you were saying earlier, that the administration doesn't think China's taken off the table sending weapons to Russia, but you haven't seen any movement towards doing that, how serious then do you think China is about sending weapons to Russia?
Difficult to know, Carol. We actually don't know the answer to that question. Certainly, we were concerned enough to bring it up privately with our Chinese counterparts and publicly with all of you, and the Vice President speaking to it in Munich. We took that seriously, but what their next step is and what's going to affect that, really, that's a question that only they can answer. The president's strong belief, and he said this himself, is that this is not a move that would be in the best interest of the Chinese and their standing in the international community, which we know, they highly prize. More critically, we don't believe that.
In the international community, you mean the people that follow and lead by our example, or that we pressure, or What do you mean there? Because if independent nations look at America and China, some of them prefer China. It's just a fact. I apologize. And if they want to give weapons to Russia, a lot of them aren't going to be that mad at them. I feel like this is a little bit more egocentric than you think.
They should see it as being in their best interest.
They better see this when it's in the best interest. I'll try to break your kneecap. I mean, they sell us everything. They own all of our debt, but yeah, you know.
Sounds like from what you're saying that you don't want to lean into the idea of threatening sanctions. Is that because you don't think that they will ultimately move in that direction? I'm just trying to get a sense.
Or because you know sanctions don't actually work, or because China makes everything on the planet so we can't actually sanction them, because if they stop selling us stuff, we're the ones that are fucked.
So why there seems to be a little bit of hesitancy to talk in detail about how the U.S. could sanction China.
Secretary Blinken has been clear that there will be consequences, and he mentioned that sanctions could be one of those consequences. So I mean, we've laid out that that there are tools available to not only the United States but to our allies and partners should China move in that direction. But ultimately, it's their choice to make, and we really strongly urge them to make the right choice here. Okay.
Hey, you better make the right choice here. Hey, I'm just talking. It'd be in your best interest. It'd be. I'm not saying, but I mean, you own everything. You buy it, you sell it. But we're just thinking that it's probably something you should do. Sell something. Fuck you. Dude, I've been fucking burning oil at the fucking bar. You're telling me to sell something? You're going to laugh and you're going to give all the food away for free and then you're going to tell me to sell something? You can't give all the food away for free and then tell me to sell something. Come on, man. That's crazy. That's crazy. You can't do that. That's crazy. Fun times.
This into law, that it will protect communities, and so that matters. That matters. You all were asking me. No, I'm saying both things can exist at the same time. You can.
Oh, I love that. Both things can exist at the same time. The American government, the epitome of not understanding the situation. Let's do it again.
No, I'm saying both things can exist at the same time. You can. No.
I'm sure that they can. Oh man, that is funny. Hold on, do it again. Do it again. All right, I'll do it again. Fine. The voice in my head says do it again. I listen to it sometimes.
No, I'm saying both things can exist at the same time. You can. No.
Oh, that's so funny. That's so funny. Both things can exist at the same time. I mean, I'm sure that they can. I'm sorry, I find that humorous. All right, let's move on. I apologize that I find so much humor in Karine. Both things can exist at the same time. Like, America, the press briefings act like it's always this black and white, it's Republicans' fault, it's this fault, They have this whole black and white mentality. And then she's like, both things can exist at the same time. I don't even know what to say. I don't even know. Oh, that's hilarious. All right, where are we at? March 2nd, DOS. Okay, let's jump ahead. Let's jump way ahead. To him. Perfect.
Please stay there, visit and meeting many foreign ministers, including the Indian Foreign Minister Jaishankar. My question is that now in the...
Can you guys read this, or should I? I know his accent's very heavy. Can you give me a holler if you can read the subtitles if you need me to speak for him? Because I know his accent is very heavy, which is why he's another reason I have the CC on, closed captions. Let me know. I'll give you a second. Hold on. Can you read his subtitles, or should I read for him? Come on, I give you time to answer. Somebody answer, please.
The next coming weeks and months, India chairing the G20 will be the global stage for many global leaders, or especially for the G20. Question is here that does Secretary believe that India still have the not power, but to break the ice as far as to stop or end the war between Russia and Ukraine, or Russia's war against Ukraine? And while in India meeting the Indian officials, you think they discussed this, that India still can play a role?
So a couple things, Doyle. First, and you heard this from the Secretary, we're deeply grateful to our Indian partners for the way they have led the G20 to date. And as you alluded to, there is a lot more work to be done over the course of this year, but India is off to a very promising start with its stewardship of the G20. Our partnership, and this is was a subject of discussion between Secretary Blinken and his counterpart, Foreign Secretary Jayashankar, earlier today.
Read, please. Damn, that takes a long time. It took you like fucking 5 minutes for me to get there. Is it that long of an overlay? It should only be a 30-second. It should be 30 seconds from the time I say it to the time you hear it. Damn. All right, I'll read next time he gets up. I'm not gonna go backwards, but
our partnership with India.
We're gonna stick on him for the whole 10 minutes this day.
Is one of the most consequential relationships we have. And that's because we work closely with India on just about everything that is a priority to us and everything that is a priority to India.
These upcoming parts are more important anyway, so we'll get there.
Increasing our mutual prosperity, supporting democracy, addressing the climate crisis, upholding a rules-based order grounded in international law. And is that point, the rules-based order that is so important to us around the world, but particularly important to the United States and to India in the context of the Indo-Pacific. It is helping to build and to preserve a free and open Indo-Pacific region, a vision that we share with our Indian counterparts. The Secretary and his counterpart had an opportunity to talk about the tremendous work India has done.
When he says free Indo-Pacific region, he just means free of China control, more under U.S. obligations. That's what he means. He doesn't mean free. He means free of China control under U.S. obligations or French obligations or the U.K. obligations. That's what he really means.
So far in hosting the G20 foreign ministers and hosting the finance ministers as well, and creating an agenda really that allows us to tackle the key issues that are so important in our global strategic partnership with India in all of its breadth and in all of its depth. The G20 is an important instrument for us. It's an important instrument for India. We've seen how the G20 can bring together countries for collective action. We think what we've seen in India over the past couple days was no exception. And the United States, for our part, participated in this foreign ministers meeting with two imperatives in mind. First, to see to it that the G20, again, with India at the helm, was a success, which clearly it was. And second, to demonstrate how the United States, together with our partners, is working collaboratively to build a world that is more prosperous, is more sustainable, it is more inclusive in terms of the global economy, and that delivers for the needs of people around the world, whether that's food, whether that's energy, whether that is health, whether that is helping people.
We give like 4 nations money for their health care and can't pay for our own health care. That's the kind of shit we do.
Around the world confront the challenges and threats that they face, from fentanyl and narcotics to a changing climate to COVID and to everything in between. Now, on the question of India, there are countries around the world that have a relationship with Russia that is distinct from the one we have. India certainly falls within that category. India has long-standing historical ties to Russia. It is connected in Russia to ways that the United States is not, and for that matter, has not been. India also has tremendous leverage in different areas, whether it's economic leverage, diplomatic leverage, political leverage, but also moral leverage. And India has the ability, that we've seen from Prime Minister Modi, to speak with tremendous moral clarity. When Prime Minister Modi said last year...
Wait, you're saying Modi has moral clarity? Modi is not... Oh, no, man. Come on. You're not saying Modi has... That is not good. That is not a good policy from America, to say that Modi is a moral clarity. That is not acceptable. That is not a good policy for America.
That this is not an era of war. The world listened, as they should, because when Prime Minister Modi and his country says something to that effect, it is meaningful to the United States, it's meaningful to Russia, it is meaningful to countries near and far.
So why do we have like 4 proxy wars going? Why do we have bombing campaigns going in Libya, Somalia, Niger, Yemen? We're helping via proxy Saudi Arabia. Syria, we're helping via proxy Israel. What are you talking about? We're not anti-war because India says that we're anti-war, or we listen. Oh, we listen. Okay, so it's like when you listen to your 3-year-old nephew and you're like, yeah, I'm listening. I'm listening. Back to my phone. You're not listening to freaking India's anti-war stance. You're not listening at all.
We will continue to work with our Indian partners. They, of course, have a unique role to play in this as the G20 hosts, but also as a country with whom we have a global strategic partnership, a country that has a relationship with Russia that we don't. And just as India has consistently expressed that this should not be an era of war, we hope that we can work closely with India to bring about an end to this war, an end to this Russian aggression that is at its core just and durable, and very much in line with the principles of the UN Charter. I think you see that reflected in the chair summary that emanated from the G20 meeting earlier today. Of course, this was a chair summary that was subscribed to by all 20 members of the G20, except for two key paragraphs. And we all know those two countries in question, Russia and China. We all know the issue in question, Russia's brutal war of aggression against Ukraine. But when it comes to the broader set of issues that neither Russia nor China could agree to accept, I think it was pretty notable that the key paragraph referenced the essential need to uphold international law and a multilateral system that safeguards peace and stability. It is a paragraph that speaks to defending, protecting the principles of the UN Charter, ensuring that countries around the world adhere to international humanitarian law, including the protection of civilians and infrastructure in armed conflict, and that makes clear where countries stand in strongly condemning the use or threat of use of nuclear weapons in any conflict. The fact that neither Russia nor China could sign on to a paragraph that should be as anodyne and common sense and basic as that, it tells you a lot about two countries that purport to believe in the UN Charter, have been permanent members of the UN Security Council, consistently raise international law and the principles of the UN Charter, only to ignore them in contexts like this. Yes, go.
Another question, and thank you, sir. Because of growing
So another question, and thank you, sir. See, Indian, very polite. So that's why we're saying moral authority. That's right, that's right. It makes sense. It does. It definitely makes sense.
relations between India
Because of growing relations between India and U.S. and also India's rise neighborhood in countries including China and Pakistan.
and US, and also India's rise, neighboring countries including China and Pakistan, of course,
Are not very happy, and they are trying their best to curtain back or whatever they
very
can
happy, and they're trying their best to curtail back or whatever they can do.
do. Now, as far as Pakistan is concerned, there are some elements of Khalistani elements
Now, as far as Pakistan is concerned, there are some elements of Khalistani elements in Pakistan, and they are
in Pakistan, and they are attacking the Hindu temples there, and also in Australia now.
attacking the Hindu temples there, and also in Australia now, according to reports, press reports, Australia, UK, Canada.
Now, as far as Canada is concerned, this Khalistani movement or elements,
Now, as far as Canada is concerned, this Khalistan movement or elements, they are the same group.
they are the same group,
Which, in 1985,
which in 1985 they brought down the Air India flight, killing 389 people.
and brought down the Air India air flight, killing 389 people from Canada to going back to India.
Going back over to India.
The question is now here, those
My
elements
question
have
is-
threatened the Indian temples here.
Those elements in the U.S. are now having themselves here in the U.S. with the support of those same elements. And is the U.S. government aware? And because India community or Hindu community there are very much now meeting so many of the officials here because they are threatened or their temples, they are by the terrorist Khalistani movements.
Without weighing in on the specifics, I can tell you that we condemn any form of violence. We condemn the threat of violence, any form of violent extremism. This is a country that has always had at its core key values. One of those is religious pluralism, tolerance for people of all faiths or no faith. That is a principle.
India had Pakistan, so they got rid of Pakistan because they wanted to get rid of all the Muslims, which is why Pakistan is like 90% Muslims, and India removed a bunch of the Muslims. They migrated north to leave the Hindu-based caste system of India. So that's not exactly true. Yeah, there's a little bit of falsehood there, bud. But that's all right, Ned. We can walk away from you feeling okay that we listened to most of your bullshit for the week. And moving on.
Yeah, awesome.
Oh, here we go. This is some stupid shit for you.
Thank you so much.
Why are you guys happy? The ladies in the front row. Oh my God. So then I'll just start in the back then.
Oh, fucking Karine. Again, let's not hang on any moment too long. Let's get a nice quick moment of Karine dosage. Let's not linger on anything too much, huh?
These are government, right? So how do you square that circle? Both things can't be true.
No, we believe both things can be true. Look,
Ha ha ha! Here it is again. Both things can be true.
Right now, D.C. is not a state. This is coming to the president.
Oh, both things can be true. I love it. Hold on.
So how do you square that circle? Both things can't be true.
No, we believe both things can be true. Look, right now, D.C. is not a state. This is coming to the president. Right? This is
Pluto is a planet. Pluto is a planet. DC's not a state. DC's not a state. She says it so much here.
something that's coming to his desk, and he has to take action. I just laid out a moment ago to Colleen why we felt that this bill doesn't actually deal with police reform. This president has been someone for many years, many decades, who has always put the safety of American families, certainly across the country, first.
Oh, wait.
That's why.
She doesn't say it here. It's, hold on. She says that DC is not a state right there, and then she rambles on for a bit. But let's get to the, oh, this is so funny.
This bill,
And therefore he should.
D.C. is not a state, so therefore the bill is coming to his desk.
DC's not a state. DC's not a state.
So he has to make a decision. It's as simple as that, Ouija, right? Because D.C. is not a state. Now, he wants D.C. to become a state. We've been very clear about that. He has said that for decades, that he believes in D.C. statehood, but it's not. It's not. And so therefore, because D.C. is not a state, when bills like this occur, it goes to the president, and he has to make a decision. And that's where we are. It's as simple as that. Now, if D.C. becomes a state, yes, the president believes that it should be governing, city should be governing on its own. That's what he believes.
But until then, they shouldn't.
But Ouija, D.C. is not a state.
Right, but I'm asking because he does have an option to veto. That is one action he could take.
But again, this is a president that believes in keeping communities safe. He believes in keeping the 700,000 residents in D.C. safe. And so he's taking that action because it's coming to him. We didn't put this legislation forth. This is not our legislation. This is the legislation that is coming before the president of the United States because D.C. is not a state. It's just not. So he has to make a decision. So he's going to make a decision that will help the residents of D.C., that will deliver for the residents of D.C. And it's as simple as that. Yeah.
Oh, 9 times in a minute 18. 9 times she said DC is not a state in 1 minute and 18 seconds. That is fucking funny to me. If you listen to this shit for 6 hours this week or whatever, you know, they each had 3 press briefings, so that's 6 hours I had to listen to. That is funny. I don't care who you are. That's funny. DC is not a state. DC is not a state. DC is not a state. Pluto is a planet. Pluto is a planet. DC's not a state. DC's not a state. DC's not a state. Oh, Karine, you're fucking funny. Oh, you were so funny. You were so funny. Alright, let's move a little further ahead. I don't want to miss.
We saw D.C. Council put forth a piece of legislation. They're not a state. They went through the.
Oh, there's number 10. She's dropping number 10 and 2 minutes later. DC's not a state. Oh, you are hilarious.
Their processes, right? They went through their mechanics. It ended up in Congress. We put out a SAP saying, yes, we oppose it, but also we support a DC statehood. That's what it says in our SAP. But we never indicated from that where the president was going to go because we were also letting that process play out in Congress. Now that we know that it's coming to the desk of the president, we're communicating where the president stands on this piece of the DC crime bill, this piece of legislation.
And DC's not a state, yo. DC's not a state. Pluto's not a planet. Oh, DC is not a state and Pluto is not a planet. Oh, I love it. She is hilarious. Oh, wait.
For ways.
No, we can't start there. This is funny. I mean, it's funny to me, right?
So,
Okay. So Secretary Blinken holds a press
Hello,
conference.
motherfucker.
Well, hello, Beef Boss. With a lot of motherfucking numbers. What's up? What's up? Hope the random sequence of numbers doesn't start the apocalypse. 29266-237. What up? What up? We're finishing our DC debunk here with Secretary Blinken talking to the people of Uzbekistan. I tried to clip this down, like find the best part, but I think he's like, we never really listened to him, so we're just gonna listen to him very quickly, because he's annoying, but it's kind of funny to me.
this is my first visit to Uzbekistan, and let me express, first of all, my gratitude to the president to the acting foreign minister, and to all the people I've had an opportunity to meet with over the course of the stay for what's been an extraordinarily warm welcome. The partnership between our countries dates back to Uzbekistan's independence. It's grown much closer in recent years. Across all of my engagements here, what I come away with is a mutual and enthusiastic commitment to strengthening that partnership even further. That starts with deepening our ties with Uzbekistan's young people. Over the past 5 years, the United States has invested $25 million in English language education, teaming up with the government to train 15,000 Uzbekistani English teachers, providing English language textbooks to some 10,000 schools. And I had the opportunity to witness some of the work that we're doing today, sitting in on a class with some really extraordinary young people who are only 3 or 4 months into English language education and already sounded incredibly fluent. This is about more than just learning a language. It's about empowering rising generations of Uzbeks to use their new skills to compete for jobs in markets that demand English proficiency, enabling connections with English speakers across the region and the world, opening doors to exchange programs in the United States, which can create new opportunities for people in both of our countries. Another way that we're expanding opportunities is by supporting the full implementation of President Mirziyoyev's reform agenda. The progress that Uzbekistan has made on labor rights shows just how transformative that agenda can be. For 11 years, more than 300 companies banned Uzbek cotton from their products due to the use of child and forced labor. In partnership with national and international labor groups and human rights organizations, the government worked to eradicate this pervasive practice, not only passing a new labor code, but ensuring that it was enforced. Last year, the International Labor Organization determined that Uzbekistan's cotton sector was free of child and forced labor. This is a historic achievement, and it's a model for countries around the world facing similar challenges. It's already making a tangible difference in the lives of Uzbek workers, farmers, businesses. Wages are up. Private investment is increasing. People of all ages, including children, are no longer being forced to pick cotton in abusive conditions. We look forward to working with the government to promote similar efforts in other sectors, as well as to fully implement the President's reform agenda. That includes delivering on commitments to defend religious freedom and press freedom, and strengthen protections for vulnerable populations, issues that I discussed today with the President. I also underscore the importance of Uzbekistan fully and transparently investigating allegations of human rights violations committed by law enforcement officers during the July 2022 unrest, and holding accountable those responsible. In addition to strengthening the U.S.-Uzbekistan relationship, we're also working together to deepen regional integration. Foreign Minister said, often I just came, as you know, from the C5+1.
Yeah, why would we go to a region without trying to work on the whole region? We're not going to Uzbekistan just for Uzbekistan. Nobody knows where the fuck that is. I don't know where that is. I'm deeply political and geographical, and I don't know where the fuck that is. Nobody knows where that is.
Meeting in Astana, where I announced a new commitment to work with Congress to provide an additional $25 million to catalyze economic growth in Central Asia.
Even if you've been to Uzbekistan, you don't know where Uzbekistan is.
That brings our total investment in the region since our meeting on the margins of the UN General Assembly last December to more than $66 million. We're focused on diversifying trade routes, fostering greater private investment, providing job training. And let me emphasize that so much of the work that we're doing in these programs and with the investments we're making from our government really serve as a catalyst for increasing private sector investment. I think the opportunities that private sector is already engaged in are significant, and everything I'm seeing suggests that there is growing enthusiasm, interest, focus on investing here and investing in other countries in Central Asia. It's also how we provide the support that matters. The United States is making these and other investments in Central Asia openly, transparently, in a way that empowers people across the region to shape their own future, and that meets high labor, human rights, environmental standards. That's how investment should work. We'll have a chance to build on these efforts next month in Samarkand when the United States sends a high-level delegation from across our government to a meeting of the U.S. Central Asia Trade and Investment Framework. So the bottom line is this: a more connected, a more cooperative Central Asia will be better able to determine its own future and deliver for its people's needs. The United States is committed to supporting that vision. One of the things that we've learned over many, many years is that the investments that we make in these partnerships benefit our partners, but they also benefit us, creating potentially new markets for our own products, our own investments, creating new opportunities to partner with countries in meeting global challenges where Central Asia can make a real difference. And just developing new friendships that benefit our country across so many different aspects of our society in many different ways. And that's fundamentally why I've come here. And I want to emphasize that this is not just a matter of one visit. It's the work that we're doing day in, day out, including through our embassies, through our engagement with the private sector, through engagements with civil society and other groups.
Always the private sector, right? Why would we even fucking come here if it wasn't for the private sector? We don't give a shit about you. We care about your natural resources. Bling, bling. Money's the only thing. That's all that matters.
And we're in it for the long haul. In our meeting today, I also had a chance to thank the government for its generous aid to the people of Afghanistan, from electricity to emergency humanitarian assistance, especially to women and girls. And we applaud Uzbekistan for repatriating more than 400 family members of terrorist foreign fighters from Syria and Iraq, whose reintegration the United States will continue to support. Finally, this visit to the region comes against the backdrop of the one-year anniversary of Putin's aggression against Ukraine. This continues to be a cause for hardship for people around the world, including here in Central Asia. The second and third order consequences of this aggression continue to be felt. Indeed, few regions have been more acutely affected than Central Asia, including Uzbekistan, where people continue to shoulder increased food and energy prices. As always, this is hitting the most vulnerable the hardest. That's why the United States has provided more than $16 million in emergency food aid to this region since President Putin launched his aggression against Ukraine. This hardship makes Uzbekistan's generosity even more remarkable. The government, the people of Uzbekistan, has stepped up to provide food and medical assistance to Ukraine. They continue to host tens of thousands of Russian citizens who fled their country after President Putin launched his war. Russia's invasion has also fostered deep concern across the region. After all, if a powerful country is willing to try to erase the borders of a sovereign neighbor by force, what's to stop it from doing the same to others? Countries across Central Asia understand this. So does the United States, and so do partners and allies around the world. And that's exactly why we've been committed and remain committed to standing for the sovereignty, the territorial integrity, the independence, not only of Ukraine, but for countries across Central Asia and indeed around the world.
That's why we're going to build lots more military bases in Uzbekistan, so that way we can have weapons pointing at Moscow. That sounds like a good idea. That sounds like a great idea.
Thank you. Yeah, survive without the microphone.
Thanks. I'd like to follow up on your comments on the Ukraine war. First, you said that you're somewhat skeptical of Moscow's talk of possible negotiations, and you say that the main aim of the U.S. government right now and European allies is to help Ukraine on the battlefield. Yet many of the non-aligned regional countries that you're meeting with this week here and also at the G20 say that they would like to see peace talks open sometime soon, and I expect that pressure will increase. How do you address that? And some have even favorably looked at China's talking points on that, and I know you're skeptical of that. Second, at the G20, Russia and China will both be sending their foreign ministers. Do you plan to talk to them one-on-one or talk to them in a group setting, and what do you plan to say to them about the Ukraine war?
Second part of the question first, no plans to see either at the G20.
Of course.
Although I suspect that we'll certainly be in group sessions of one kind or another together. So the first thing to say is this. No one wants peace more urgently than the people of Ukraine. They're the victims every single day of Russia's aggression. And if they could have peace yesterday, they take it. And so
nobody wants it less than the American government. We're making tons of money, yo. Our lobby campaign is killing it. Our stocks are doing great. Our portfolios are exploding. So nobody wants it to end more than the Ukrainians. Nobody wants to continue more than the American government. And that's the situation we're in.
And so with countries around the world who are suffering, as I said, from the second and third order effects of Putin's aggression. Now, we all know the simple truth that the war could end tomorrow. It could end today if President Putin so decided. He started it, he can stop it. It's on one level as simple as that. And we should never lose sight of that fact.
On one level, it's as simple as that. Now, really, it's not. But on one level, it's as simple as that.
No one should lose sight of the fact that we have an aggressor and we have a victim. And to have any kind of equivalence between the two, including suggesting who's more committed to peace, I think is profoundly wrong. Second, if Russia, President Putin, were genuinely prepared to engage in meaningful diplomacy necessary to end the aggression, of course, we'd be the first to work on that and to engage. But there's zero evidence of that. To the contrary, the evidence is all in the other direction. Just listen to President Putin's own words. Cite just one example. He said recently and publicly that unless and until Ukraine recognizes what he called the new territorial realities, there's nothing to even talk about. In other words, unless and until Ukraine accepts the fact that Russia has seized their territory and gets to keep it, they won't even talk. That's obviously a non-starter and should be a non-starter, not just for Ukraine or for us, but for countries around the world. And I think that certainly resonates here in this region, where every single Central Asian.
I think they just want their borders to go back to the same way they were in like 1990, which is understandable. I don't know. I mean, the border dispute is definitely something that could actually be negotiated, I think. That's actually a stance for negotiations, because that's actually a discussion, but we don't want discussions. We want to sell weapons. We're not done selling weapons. We need to sell a lot more. We didn't end Afghanistan without plans, right? Like when we ended Afghanistan, we weren't like, we're moving weapons for, no, we had plans for that shit. We had plans for our weapons.
Country feels very strongly about their territorial integrity, their sovereignty, their independence, all of which, of course, were very, very hard won. So the real question is whether Russia will get to a point where it is genuinely prepared to end its aggression and to do so in a way that is consistent with the United Nations Charter and these very principles. That's why I think what you hear around the world, and you saw reflected in the resolution that was passed at the UN General Assembly by 141 countries, is the strong desire for peace, but for a just and durable peace. Just in that it's consistent with the principles of the UN Charter in terms of territorial integrity, sovereignty, and independence, and durable, as I said before, so that we don't leave things in a place where Russia gets to simply repeat this exercise, a year or 2 years or 3 years later. It rests, it rearms, and it reattacks. So I think that's what we need to be focused on. In terms of the proposal that China put forth, as I've said and as others in the government said, look, there's some positive elements there, including things that China itself has said several times in the past. It's very similar to elements that are in Ukraine's own proposal that President Zelensky put out some time ago. But if China was genuinely serious about this, the very first principle it put out, sovereignty, it would have been spending all of the last year working in support of the restoration of Ukraine's full sovereignty. And of course, it's been doing the opposite in terms of its own efforts to advance Russian propaganda and misinformation about the war, blocking and tackling for Russia in international organizations, and as we've made clear recently, now contemplating the provision of lethal.
Man, this guy is so full of shit. All right, let's just move on. I don't want to hear him anymore. No, I don't want to start at the UK. Why would I want to start at the UK? Let's start here. Okay.
And that explosive residue was identified on the
So,
number.
I should probably tell you what we're doing here, huh? Just jumping around like, hey, This is where we're at. Fucking ADD stoner. Sorry. So, Professor Jeffrey Sachs and Ray McGovern addressed the UN Security Council. What's up, Crimson? Crimson Tide. Roll. What's up, Crimson? How you doing tonight? I'm doing some DC bullshit right now. And one of the things that's DC bullshit is the Nord Stream pipeline. So Jeffrey Sachs and Ray McGovern are addressing the UN Security Council. So gutless? Man, I mean, okay, you can call me gutless, but I'm just kind of sick of fucking people putting penises on my chat, or racial slurs on my chat, or hate in my chat. So yeah, I mean, you can say gutless, I can say I'm just sick of trolls, but okay. I mean, I do follower only chat because that way I get a few less trolls, I guess, you know? Sorry. So gutless. Alright, I mean, oh no, you have to click a button and then you can unfollow as soon as you leave. Like, it just kind of stops a few trolls. Oh, my bad. So
of those items. According to officials quoted in local media, the investigation is ongoing. On 4 February 2023, the German Attorney General stated that their investigation was also continuing. We understand that the Danish investigation is continuing as well. Further, we are aware of new reports alleging acts of sabotage involving the two pipelines. I reiterate that the United Nations is not in a position to verify or confirm any of the claims relating to these incidents, and that we await the findings of the ongoing national investigations. Given the sensitivity and speculation regarding this issue, we urge all concerned to show restraint and avoid any speculation. We should avoid any unfounded accusations that could further escalate the already heightened tensions in the region and potentially inhibit the search for the truth. And while we don't know exactly what happened beneath the waters of the Baltic Sea in September 22, one thing is certain. Whatever caused the incident, its fallout counts among the many risks the invasion of Ukraine has unleashed. 1 year since the start of the war, we must redouble our efforts to end it, in line with international law and the UN Charter. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank Mrs. DiCarlo for her briefing, and I now give the floor to Mr. Jeffrey Sachs.
Thank you very much. My name is Jeffrey Sachs. I am university professor at Columbia University. I'm a specialist in the global economy, including global trade, finance, infrastructure, and economic statecraft. I appear before...
Of course, this is why I'm bringing this up, is because of Jeffrey Sachs and Ray McGovern. They are fantastic.
For the UN Security Council on my own behalf, I represent no government or organization in the testimony that I will deliver. The destruction of the Nord Stream pipelines on September 26, 2022 constitutes an act of international terrorism and represents a threat to the peace. It is the responsibility of the UN Security Council to take up the question of who might have carried out the act in order to bring the perpetrator to international justice, to pursue compensation for the damaged parties, and to prevent future such actions. The consequences of the destruction of the Nord Stream pipelines are enormous. They include not only the vast economic losses related to the pipelines themselves and their future potential use, but also the heightened threat to transboundary infrastructure of all kinds: submarine internet cables, international pipelines for gas and hydrogen, transboundary power transmission, offshore wind farms, and more. The global transformation to green energy will require considerable transboundary infrastructure, including in international waters. Countries need to have full confidence that their infrastructure will not be destroyed by third parties. Some European countries have recently expressed concern over the safety of their offshore infrastructure. For all of these reasons, the investigation by the UN Security Council of the Nord Stream explosions is a high global priority. The destruction of the Nord Stream pipelines required a very high degree of planning, expertise, and technological capacity. The Nord Stream 2 pipelines are a marvel of engineering. Each section of pipe is rolled steel of 4.5 centimeters thickness and with a pipeline internal diameter of 1.15 meters. The pipe is encased in concrete of 10.9 centimeters thickness. The weight of each section of concrete encased pipe is 24 metric tons. The Nord Stream 2 pipelines, some 1,200 kilometers in length, contain around 200,000 pipes. The pipelines sit on the sea floor. Destroying a pipeline of heavy rolled steel encased in concrete at depths of 70 to 90 meters requires a highly advanced technology for transportation of the explosives, diving to install the explosives, and detonation. To do so undetected in the exclusive economic zones of Denmark and Sweden adds greatly to the complexity of the operation. As a number of senior officials have publicly confirmed, An action of this sort must have been carried out by a state-level actor. Only a handful of state-level actors have both the technical capacity and access to the Baltic Sea to have carried out this action. Include the United States, Russia, the United Kingdom.
Okay, we're already starting to overheat here. But you can, so as Seymour Hersh was saying in one of his interviews, if you look at the evidence, it's pretty blatant who did this. And if you narrow it down, you only have a few choices. So his reporting wasn't really that groundbreaking. And this is what he's pointing to. He's just pointing to like the basic, like without the unsourced without the unnamed source, you can still point to a lot of shit.
Kingdom, Poland, Norway, Germany, Denmark, and Sweden, either individually or in some combination. Ukraine lacks the necessary technologies as well as access to the Baltic Sea. A recent report by the Washington Post revealed that the intelligence agencies of the NATO countries have privately concluded that there is no evidence whatsoever that Russia carried out this action. This also comports with the fact that Russia had no obvious motive to carry out this act of terrorism on its own critical infrastructure. Indeed, Russia is...
Why would they blow something up that they were going to use to sell oil to Germany? Why would they do that? That makes no sense.
...likely to bear considerable expenses to repair the pipelines. 3 countries have reportedly carried out investigations of the Nord Stream terrorism: Denmark, Germany, and Sweden. These countries presumably know much more about the circumstances of the terrorist attack. Sweden, in particular, has perhaps the most to tell the world about the crime scene, which its divers investigated. Yet instead of sharing this information globally, Sweden has kept the results of its investigation secret from the rest of the world. Sweden has refused to share its findings with Russia and turned down a joint investigation with Denmark and Germany. In the interest of global peace, the UN Security Council should require these countries to immediately turn over the results of their investigations to the UN Security Council. There is only one detailed account to date of the Nord Stream destruction, the one recently put forward by investigative journalist Seymour Hersh, ostensibly based on information leaked by Hersh by an unnamed source. Hersh attributes the Nord Stream destruction to a decision ordered by U.S. President Joe Biden and carried out by U.S. agents in a covert operation that Hersh describes in detail. The White House has described Hersh's account as, quote, completely and utterly false, unquote, but did not offer any information contradicting Hersh's account and did not offer any alternative explanation. Senior U.S. officials made statements before and after the Nord Stream destruction that showed the U.S. animus towards the pipelines. On January 27, 2022, Undersecretary of State Victoria Nuland tweeted, quote, if Russia invades Ukraine, one way or another, Nord Stream 2 will not move forward, end quote. On February 7th, President Biden said, quote, if Russia invades again, then there will be no longer Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it, end quote. When asked by the reporter how he would do that, he responded, quote, I promise you we will be able to do it, end quote. On September 30th, 2022...
Don't use his own words against him. That's so rude.
Immediately following the terrorist attack on the pipeline, Secretary of State Antony Blinken declared that the destruction of the pipeline is, quote, also a tremendous opportunity. It's a tremendous opportunity to once and for all remove the dependence on Russian energy and thus to take away from Vladimir Putin the weaponization of energy as a means of advancing his imperial design, end quote. On January 28th, 2023, Undersecretary Nuland declared in testimony to Senator Ted Cruz in the U.S. Senate, quote, I am, and I think the administration is, very gratified to know that Nord Stream 2 is now, as you like to say, a hunk of metal at the bottom of the sea, end quote. Such language is not at all appropriate in the face of international terrorism. I hope that the United States, together with all other Security Council members, will condemn this act of international terrorism and join together in an urgent UN Security Council-led investigation of this international crime in order to determine the truth. The truth is not yet known by the world, but it is knowable. More than ever, the world depends on the UN Security Council to do its work to stop the escalation to a new world war. The world will be safe only when the permanent members work together diplomatically to solve global crises, including the war in Ukraine and the rising tensions in East Asia. The UN Security Council provides the unique global venue for that peace-affirming work. More than ever, we need a healthy, functioning UN Security Council carrying out the mission assigned to it by the UN Charter. a UN Security Council objective investigation of the Nord Stream terrorism, in which all countries contribute what they know, is important for the global confidence in this body, and most importantly, for global peace and sustainable development. Thank you very much.
I thank Mr. Sachs for his briefing, and I now give the floor to Mr. Ned and Karine.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I would associate myself completely with Professor Sachs's comments. I do not have a prepared text, and so I was unable to give that to the people who asked me to give it to them. I was asked to do this less than a day ago. No one suggested what I might say, and of course, no one even asked me what I would say. So these are my personal remarks based on my experience for 27 years as an intelligence analyst and as an observer, and I notice that I'm called a political activist. Well, this is my way of paying back for the education I got as an intelligence analyst in the U.S. intelligence community. Now, I would say that on my way here, in 2 airports this morning, I noticed a bunch of children, little children and school-age children, and it made me think back to my days as a school-age child. I was one of those who hid under my desk because of the threat of the Russian atom bomb, as though that would protect me. Fast forward, when I became a professional analyst and chief of the Soviet foreign policy branch at CIA, I was able to tell the president and Henry Kissinger that the Russians were really interested in putting a cap on the arms race. Suffice it to say, I was instrumental in the anti-ballistic missile treaty signed in May of 1972. I was there. 30 years of strategic stability. 30, count them, 3 decades.
3 decades.
When Mr. Bush Jr. decided he would leave the ABM treaty without any real explanation. And then Mr. Trump left the INF treaty, which I thought could never be concluded because it involved the destruction of a whole class of nuclear-tipped intermediate-range ballistic missiles in Europe and in Siberia. Then we had the Open Skies Treaty, from which the U.S. left. And now we are warned that the New START is also in danger. I must say that after the anti-ballistic missile treaty was signed, I was feeling euphoric. I need not worry about whether they're building this building just to be demolished by the next nuclear weapon. And it's very sad for me to watch what's going on now, where people can't get together and deal. Verhandeln. That's the German word for negotiate, deal. If you look at it, it comes from the word hunt. The hunt. The hunt. You reach out the hunt and you get to know and you get to understand what is bothering the other party. Now, I don't want to get ahead of myself here. I do want to talk about Seymour Hersh's article. And I have to say up front, full disclosure, that I am a friend of Seymour Hersh. And so I will not opine myself. I will cite a very distinguished former U.S. ambassador and also Assistant Secretary of Defense. These are the words he said about Seymour Hersh. Hersh attracts whistleblowers because he has a perfect record of protecting their identities and accurately publishing what they reveal after due diligence, despite the government denials and slanderous attacks that invariably follow. His reputation is such that people of conscience seek him out. People of conscience. As a U.S. Army officer and as a CIA employee, I took an oath, one oath. It was to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Some of us took that oath seriously. And when we see this kind of thing going on, we go to somebody who might be able to protect us and might be able to get the word out. Now, it was 2 weeks ago. Has the New York Times mentioned Cy Hersh's article? Has it even reported the denials? No. Not yet. This is quite, the Germans would say, merkwürdig. This is very, very remarkable. Now, let me go on here and talk about, how do we evaluate those who are smearing Seymour Hersh? Well, as Jeffrey Sachs has already said, the CIA spokesperson said, the claim is completely and utterly false, quote, end quote. Whoa. Now, I have to confess, being an alumnus of the CIA, that our PR people, our public relations people, do not have a very good record. No one wants to go back 20 years to Colin Powell's speech before this Security Council. We all know about that. what I would like to do is simply say what happened before that speech. Before that speech, some conscientious whistleblower gave the text of a UN debriefing of Hussein Kamel, one of Saddam Hussein's sons-in-law. And who was he? He was supervisor over the radiological, biological, chemical, and nuclear program such as it was in Baghdad. And he said to his interviewers, UN interviewers, US interviewers, UK interviewers, he said the following. All nuclear, chemical, biological, and missile programs have been destroyed. Now they asked him, the interrogators did, well, how do you know? And Kamel said, well, I was in charge of them. I mean, I don't know how it works in your country, but when I order something destroyed, it gets destroyed. Yeah, how do you know? Did you check? Well, yeah, I checked a couple. Are you trying to get me to say they were not destroyed? This is 1995. Now, someone leaked that transcript to Newsweek.
Wow.
Newsweek on the 24th, almost exactly 20 years ago, Newsweek published this report saying, Hussein Kamel, the highest-ranking Iraqi official ever to defect from Saddam Hussein's inner circle, told the CIA and British intelligence officers and U.S. inspectors in the autumn of 1995 that after the Gulf War, Iraq destroyed all its chemical and biological weapons and the missiles to deliver them. Kamel had direct knowledge of what he claimed for 10 years. He ran Iraq's nuclear, chemical, biological, and missile programs. And in a classic understatement, the author, John Barry, in Newsweek says, the defector's tale raises questions about whether the WMD stockpiles attributed to Iraq still exist. Well, I guess. What happened? Newsweek published this in a little blurb, first on their site, their website. Then the members of the media went to a fellow named Bill Harlow, who was CIA PR person, CIA spokesperson for the agency, and he said, "Look, this report is incorrect. It's bogus. It's wrong, and it's untrue." Whoa. Incorrect, bogus, wrong, and untrue. And what did the members of the press do? They breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Whew, I'm sure glad you told us that because we were going to publish on that. It looked pretty documentary. It looked pretty authoritative." It was indeed the transcript of that debriefing. So just a word about those who are smearing Cy Hirsch. They don't have a really good record for credibility. Let me move on here. I'd like to talk a little bit about unprovoked. Now, we have heard more than 100 times that the Russian invasion of Ukraine was unprovoked. This goes back to the widening of NATO despite the promise not to. And I had a personal experience with one of Gorbachev's chief advisors. His name is Kuvaldin, Viktor Borisovich. And about 8 years I saw him in Moscow and I said, Viktor, I said, Mr. Kuvaldin, why is it that this agreement was not written down? And he said, Mr. McGovern, I'll tell you, the usual reasons. The Germans hadn't bought into it yet, and the Warsaw Pact still existed. But really and truly, Mr. McGovern, here's what it was. We trusted you. Now, we all know the history of how NATO more than doubled in size with all countries to the east, more than 1 inch to the east. I want to not belabor that point. It's
not
simply
1
that,
inch.
It's more than just NATO enlargement. When the Crimea was annexed by Russia, Mr. Putin got up a month later and he said, we had to annex Crimea because of the coup in Kiev in February of 2014. And even more important than NATO membership for Ukraine was the prospect that medium-range ballistic missiles would be put on the periphery of the United States, which indeed they are capable of doing because there are capsules, holes in Romania and Poland that accommodate Tomahawk missiles, cruise missiles, and will eventually accommodate hypersonic missiles. This is very, very serious. Mr. Putin made this point in December of last year, not last year, but the year before, in talking to his chief military. Now, how do I end this? I would like to do a little human business here. The Verstehen. Let me just point out that when I was in Germany last, there was a button that one put on the lapel, and it said, Putin Versteher. Okay? Now, those of you who know German know that means someone who understands Putin. And I thought to myself, wow, somebody is interested in understanding Mr. Putin? And my friend said, no, right, for God's sake, don't wear that button. That's a pejorative. That means you're in Putin's pocket.
Oh.
Now, Verstehen comes from the word stehen, to stand, okay? If you can't understand where people stand, you can't understand what bothers them. And what bothers Mr. Putin, as well as membership in NATO for Ukraine, is the emplacement of these holes already operational in Romania and Poland, right on the periphery of the United States. They are disguised as ABM systems, but they can easily be put, accommodate cruise missiles and, as I say, hypersonic missiles. Now, there was a motto in the recent German demonstrations. It said, verhandeln statt schießen. Now, verhandeln is the word for negotiate, to talk. Hand, die Hand. You reach out the hand to the other person, you try to understand them. Verhandeln statt schießen. Schießen is to shoot, okay? Now that makes good sense. But I have to tell you that it's not welcome in Germany. A good friend of mine, Heinrich Bücker, has been convicted of saying we ought to put ourselves in the shoes of Mr. Putin, and we ought to realize the far-right influence in the government of Kiev. He was convicted in a German court. He's appealing, but he's not going to pay the 2,000 euro fine, so it's likely he will end up in jail for several months. Now, that's freedom of speech. We enjoy that here in the United States. I really am concerned about what will happen to my friend. Just suffice it to end here and to say that this verhandeln, verhandeln, reach your hand. Let's be human here. Let's not dust each other off. Let's extend our hands. Verhandeln statt schießen. Well, it was very, very bleak in our country during the suppression of blacks. And I had the privilege of working with Vincent Harding, Dr. Harding, who was the author of Martin Luther King's speech on Vietnam. He had a song, and the song was, "We got to keep on moving forward, never turning back." Well, what I would suggest is that we need to keep on moving forward. And I would recommend the second stanza of this to you all. And if you would listen, I would really very appreciate it. We're going to keep on moving forward. We're going to keep on loving our enemies. We're going to keep on loving our enemies. Going to keep on loving our enemies. Never turning back. Never turning back. In closing, I will just refer to those children that I noticed more than I usually notice children in the airports today. And when I ask you all, because you have the power to do so, given to you after the last major world war, I ask you to do what's necessary so that no one kills the children anymore. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I now give the floor to those members of the Security Council who wish to make statements. I now give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Mr. President, today we have come together today for a very significant meeting. It has been convened, but it significantly differs in tone from the previous meeting on sabotage against Nord Stream that we convened on the 30th of September last year. As many of us recall, then, in principle, it was clear who could be behind this act of international terrorism. This is precisely how we qualify what happened, and Russian investigative bodies have initiated criminal proceedings under the relevant article of our country's criminal code. The leadership of the US made several statements, and the nub of it boiled down to the fact that if Russia continues to act in a way that is not pleasing to the US, then Nord Stream would be destroyed. Then there was the former Foreign Minister of Poland, Mr. Sikorski, who in his Russophobic rant in social media thanked the US. Then there was the careless text sent to someone who also hates our country no less, the former Prime Minister of the UK, Theresa May. But formally, the US has totally rejected its participation in the sabotage against international...
I mean, that's what people do, yo. China's gonna deny the weather balloon, we're gonna deny Nord Stream. Oh, wait. That probably was a weather balloon. And we actually did do Nord Stream. So I guess those are two different things. My bad.
Critical pipeline infrastructure, incidentally, as they are still doing now. Since examples of the enmity of officials in Washington regarding the destruction of Nord Stream has just increased, primarily thanks to the well-known Russophobe, the godmother of the anti-constitutional coup in Ukraine, Mrs. Nuland. But we, of course, wouldn't have sought to convene today's meeting just because of that. The situation is that on the 8th of February, thanks to the well-known American investigative journalist, the Pulitzer Prize winner Seymour Hersh, we found out not only that...
See, it's the Russian that announces that he's a Pulitzer Prize winner. That's interesting.
The US did it, but how they did it, with the involvement of their NATO ally, Norway. Based on facts and...
We did it with Norway, and now we're going to try to get Norway into UN. That's always fun, right? Alright, let's watch the most replayed part here. Let's watch the most replayed part. We gotta
and
do
Germany
it.
in particular, and the results of preliminary investigations confirming the suspicions of sabotage. Mr. President, my country reiterates its condemnation of these unjustifiable attacks aimed at civilian infrastructure. Apart from the significant environmental consequences, they are leading to economic losses, sending a shockwave well beyond the countries concerned, and are thus increasing the pressure exerted by the conflict on the economy of a number of countries. We would recall that the parties are called upon to respect international conventions protecting populations and civilian infrastructure from all armed attack. Finally, my country calls upon all parties to demonstrate responsibility and circumspection, and to do everything possible to ensure that those responsible for these attacks be held accountable for their acts before the competent authorities. Thank you.
Of Gabon for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, President, and let me begin by thanking Under Secretary General DiCarlo for her briefing. President, the UK condemns the acts of sabotage targeting the Nord Stream pipeline. However, it's not clear to us why 5 months on.
Yeah, like they're trying to push Sweden and Norway and Finland and Beelzebub and Narnia. We're trying to get I can't think of any other. Atlantis. We're trying to get them all into NATO.
Russia is suddenly pursuing this issue here with such urgency. We welcome a letter from Denmark, Sweden and Germany informing UN member states that investigations are ongoing. The UK fully supports these technical investigations led by competent national authorities and awaits their findings. President, the only recent development regarding Nord Stream of which we are aware is a new round of lurid accusations by Russian state-controlled media and public figures. And these are the same actors that originally chose to accuse the UK.
Russian state actors and public figures. That's it. Not Seymour Hersh, because he's obviously an American from an American journal that's worked for the New York Times. He's got a Pulitzer Prize, but whatevs.
The basis for these new accusations is an article by an American journalist that cites only a single secret source. And it's no surprise
that he's still getting good articles because people trust him and he doesn't leak his sources. Oh, he doesn't leak his sources and he gets good sources? That's crazy.
The Russian ambassador chose not to dwell on the details, as these details have been comprehensively debunked already by other journalists, including on the basis of very straightforward open source fact-checking.
Open source fact-checking, controlled by the UK or Google or the American government? Who's that controlled by again? One of those. Come on now.
It's therefore our view that the real reason for Russia's urgency today is a desperate desire to distract attention 1 year on from the start of its full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
This guy seems like a complete Prince Harry wannabe toolbag. This guy seems like a complete Prince Harry wannabe toolbag puppet master. My opinion, of course. That's not true.
Massive casualties suffered by the Russian military, and from a devastation that Russia's war has wrought on the people of Ukraine, as well as its effects across the globe. The UK takes the issue of attacks on critical infrastructure very seriously. It's why we have so frequently condemned in this council Russia's attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, on Ukraine's schools, and on Ukraine's hospitals. However, we're not convinced that Russia's initiative today, or its calls for the establishment of a UN Commission of Inquiry, amount to anything more than a distraction from its continuing aggression in Ukraine.
I mean, it's an act of war on the US's part, but, why would we look into that? The UK's got our back. They got our back.
Thank you, President.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of the United Arab Emirates.
Mr. President.
Oh, the UAE. Who cares about what you see? The other big one was the United States. I guess we should listen to some of that.
Resources. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Japan for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Thank you, Mr. President. And we thank Undersecretary General DiCarlo for her briefing. We listened carefully to the other briefers today. We recognize their past history and service, though we question their relevant knowledge to speak as an expert briefer on the topic at hand. Mr. President, the United States is deeply concerned by the sabotage that took place on Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 pipelines last September. Deliberate actions to damage critical infrastructure cannot be tolerated.
We do it all the time. That's what, the American war machine does.
But let's be clear why we are really here in the Council today. Later this week, as we near the one-year anniversary, the General Assembly will debate the impact of Russia's illegal and full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Today's meeting is a blatant attempt to distract from this. As the world unites this week to call for a just and secure peace in Ukraine, consistent with the UN Charter, Russia desperately wants to change the subject. This is not the first time Russia has used its seat on this council to amplify conspiracy theories from the internet. We wish it would apply the same urgency shown over the past 3 days instead to the myriad credible reports of human rights abuses and violations of international humanitarian law caused by its invading forces. However, let me state clearly and plainly, accusations the United States was involved in this act of sabotage are completely false. The United States was not involved at all.
Oh!
Competent authorities in Denmark, Germany, and Sweden are investigating these incidents in a comprehensive, transparent...
Germany, Denmark, and Sweden. Name 3 countries that are under U.S. control. Or wait, what are 3 countries that are under U.S. obligations? What are 3 countries that are World Bank puppets? Where?
An impartial manner.
Impartial.
Resources for the UN investigations should be preserved for cases when states are unwilling
Oh.
or unable to investigate genuinely.
Got jokes.
Let us not be fooled by Russia's claim it only wants impartial investigation. Its draft resolution clearly implicates the United States and mischaracterizes statements by U.S. officials. Russia does not seek an impartial investigation. It seeks to...
Neither does the U.S. Let's be clear on that. Neither does the United States of assholes. No.
Prejudice ongoing ones toward a predetermined conclusion of its choosing. The expedited timeline on which the Russian delegation demanded we discuss this issue casts significant doubt on the seriousness of its intentions. The Nord Stream pipeline ruptures occurred 5 months ago. Now, as we approach the 1-year anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Russia claims it is urgent the Council discuss it this week. Russia, yet again, is abusing its position as a permanent member of the Security Council by using this meeting as a platform for disinformation and conspiracy theories. It is regrettable that with everything else on the Council's agenda this week, North Korean ballistic missiles, tension in the Middle East, a humanitarian crisis in Turkey and Syria following devastating earthquakes, that Russia is again deliberately wasting this Council's time. Russia's claim to be concerned over the sabotage of critical infrastructure rings hollow. For months, Russia has relentlessly attacked its neighbor, striking cities and towns across Ukraine, damaging and destroying residential areas and medical facilities. Russia's attacks against Ukraine's civilian infrastructure have left families in Ukraine without heat and electricity during the coldest, darkest period of the year. Later this week, countries will vote in the General Assembly on a resolution reaffirming the UN Charter and calling for an end to hostilities in Ukraine in a manner consistent with the Charter's principles. This should be our priority. Instead of indulging conspiracy theories, we should focus on ways to diplomatically resolve this conflict in a way consistent with the UN Charter and fully restore the territorial integrity of a UN member state. Thank you, Mr. President.
Oh my goodness, what a joke. What a joke the United States is. At least he read it nice and calmly, I guess, or something. But man, what a joke this guy is. Speaking of jokes.
Please give a nice huge round of applause, Graham Elwood!
Graham Elwood had a comedy bit. He hasn't had anything. I wanted to do like one of his side episodes because he's not that. I don't know. We got to show the funny side. Graham can be a little funny. So here's a minute clip.
My favorite thing that the media does in America, they'll take whatever the story of the day is we should all be paying attention to, and they put it next to the dumbest story ever. Remember last summer when Jeff Bezos threw his cock rocket around the planet? It was 4 minutes long and barely penetrated the Earth's atmosphere. So I guess Bezos wanted the whole world to know what his girlfriend feels. Republicans would skull fuck a puppy to turn a nickel. The Democrats will skull fuck a puppy and then put a rainbow flag on it. And I shudder to think what would happen if these incremental centrists were around during like bold times in history when bold change needed to happen. You know, like FDR's famous speech, the only thing we have to fear is everything. It's too hard. We can't get it done. Like if Trump would have smoked weed when he was president, he wouldn't have wanted to build a wall around Mexico. He would have just been down at the border going, we should start a music festival. If Biden smoked weed, he might, you know, remember where he is. Or so it's like breaking news. Like, oh, the president finished a sentence today, ladies and gentlemen.
That's not for today. What's going on? That's not for today. That is for another day. What the hell? Oh, this is for another day. Alright, that's not working. Sorry, you don't get this yet. We don't get this yet. We get this. Gotta finish debunking that bullshit Ned was screaming about. Check out a, I don't know, super prejudice, biased take on things.
This time near the city of Jericho, an Israeli-American man has been killed in his car during a drive-by shooting. Israeli forces say Palestinian gunmen targeted several vehicles before fleeing the scene. The incident comes a day after 2 Israelis were killed by a Palestinian in the West Bank town of Hawara. Israeli settlers responded by attacking Palestinian homes and property in the area, killing 1 Palestinian man. Our correspondent Rebecca Ritters filed this report.
Another standoff on the streets of Hawara. Just as we arrive, so does this Israeli settler, who gets out of his car to confront a group of Palestinians. Surrounded by the foreign press, Israeli soldiers intervene.
Tensions are still really high here in Hawara. We're standing at the entrance to the town. You can see there's an increased military presence. This is one of the main thoroughfares for settlers trying to get from the settlement of Itzar to Jerusalem, and they're using it. You can see here the cars honking every time a car comes through here. There's provocation. Really, it feels like anything could happen.
On Sunday,
That's
a Palestinian gunman shot.
I was looking for Graham's Anything Could Happen. It's such a fun little game show that we play together, and he hasn't had one in so long. That's what I was looking for. Anything could happen. Thank you.
Dead 2 Israeli brothers in this town, which led to a revenge attack by Israeli settlers who rampaged through the streets, torching cars and houses. 1 Palestinian was shot dead in the violence, 4 others badly injured.
I left the shop to pick up one of my employees and I saw 400 settlers setting fire to it. They burned the container, burnt the warehouses, burnt the storehouse for electrical appliances and destroyed the house. They didn't leave anything.
As tensions escalate, Israel's security minister has urged citizen restraint.
I want to comment on what happened in Hawara. I understand the hard feelings, but this isn't the way. We can't take the law into our own hands.
Instead, he said it should be Israel's government and security forces who, quote, crush the enemy. Fresh reports have now emerged from Jericho, also in the occupied West Bank. A suspected Palestinian gunman shot dead another Israeli. All this turmoil erupting on the heels of an emergency summit in Jordan, where Israeli and Palestinian officials agreed on measures to try to cool things down. But the ongoing violence putting any efforts of de-escalation on shaky ground.
And correspondent Rebecca Ritters, who filed that report, joins us from Jerusalem. How did you experience the situation in Hawara?
Well, the situation there, Sarah, as you could see in that report, is nothing short of tense. Tensions very high after Sunday's attack following
Oh, just after Sunday's attack it's getting tense, is it? Not since this whole, 60 people killed in 40 days or whatever. There's been massive swings. But just since this recent attack, tensions are getting high. Fucking blind, man.
shooting of those 2 Israeli brothers, and then the Palestinian call for the settler call for vengeance, and they're going into that.
The Palestinian call for vengeance. Yeah, that's what this was. This was already a reaction.
town and attacking homes and cars and Palestinians on Sunday night. We saw an increased military presence in the town. As I mentioned in the piece, it's a town, it's a thoroughfare that settlers use to get from Jerusalem to some of the settlements on the other side, and so they come into contact with Palestinians in the village. There was a lot of provocation while we were there. All the settlers, as they drove through, honking horns and creating provocations and more tension. We saw Palestinians calling back and this back and forth. Now, Hawara is a hotspot. As I say, it's that thoroughfare town, so settler violence or settler clashes isn't uncommon, but the extent to what we saw on Sunday isn't very common. Some are saying it's unprecedented, or at least since scenes from the end of the Intifada in the early 2000s. So tensions very high, but not just there. As we were leaving the town, the reports were coming out about that shooting in Jericho. Now, Jericho's not normally considered one of the major hotspots, but you can see these things popping up all across the West Bank as tensions flare. So things not looking, feeling certainly like...
They're just flaring now, though. Not the last several months that Palestinians have been getting slaughtered. Just now starting to flare, though. Just starting to now flare.
They're going to settle down anytime soon, Sarah.
What efforts are being made to reduce the risk of further escalation?
Well, we've, of course, seen all the international calls for calm. We've seen even calls from calm from, certain Israeli politicians, Benjamin Netanyahu saying don't take matters into your own hands, and other ministers echoing that. But we have seen some ministers from the far right, from Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir's party, condoning the violence and, in fact, supporting it. So, the tensions are being stoked regardless, and I think we are seeing calls for calm. We saw a couple of weeks ago as tensions were flaring again a few weeks ago after another raid in the northern West Bank. We saw it timed with the US Secretary of State here, and he was calling for calm. We did see a momentary lull in tensions, but even given things like the summit that was held in Jordan on Sunday, and out of that summit there were assurances from the Israeli side saying that they would halt settlement expansion at least for a few months to try and calm things ahead of the Ramadan, the Islamic Ramadan holy month.
They're going to calm tensions with promising like a 3 to 6 month freeze on expansions. That's nothing. That's
coming up, and everyone worried about things spiraling out of control. But it is hard to see with out of that meeting, Benjamin Netanyahu said, no, we're not going to halt these settlement expansions. So definitely a lot of tit-for-tat going on. It's very hard to kind of know where it's going, but it certainly doesn't feel like it's going in the right direction.
DW correspondent Rebecca Ritters, thank you.
Well, let's get more on this from DW's Middle East analyst, Shani Razanis. Welcome to the studio, Shani. So we have this sudden and very localized explosion of violence, which presumably has not come out of nowhere.
Well, of course not. We see it as this is what's happening at the backdrop of very strong political weakness on both sides, Israelis and Palestinian side. On the Palestinian side, we have Mahmoud Abbas, the leader of Fatah in the West Bank. He is a weak, old leader who is being challenged by the fractions on the ground, by Hamas from Gaza, and we see the unrest bubbling, and he has very little to do to stop and contain that. On an Israeli side...
Because he's seen by the Palestinians as a weak leader, so
exactly.
What do we care what he has to say?
Exactly, waiting for his inevitable end, basically, of his regime. And then when we look at Israel, Netanyahu being, standing on trial, his legal situation is so complicated, he found himself only being able to form a coalition with the extreme right and the settlers. And they feel emboldened now. They feel they have the upper hand. They can control Netanyahu. They can lead the government's actions. And he has very little to do to stop them or calm things down. And again, this is bubbling on the surface, in the ground, in the most heated places of daily contact between settlers and Palestinians. Things that have been so far quiet are just rising up because of the boldness that we feel on both sides.
So it sounds like there is quite a risk of further escalation.
Definitely, and we're looking into the 22nd of March as the most crucial day. It's the beginning of Ramadan. The area is always very tense before the beginning of Ramadan and during the month of Ramadan. We saw an American attempt just a few days ago in Jordan to try and calm things down in a summit to bring things into this month a bit more calmly. This hasn't really yielded any results. world. So things are looking tense.
Okay. We have another meeting today, this time the new Israeli foreign minister here in Germany with his counterpart Annalena Baerbock. What do you expect from that?
Well, the Germans will, like other Europeans that have already responded to what's happening, are looking for things to come down. The whole world, you know, we see international eyes towards Israel, towards Jerusalem. They want things to come down. However, it's not going to be as simple because Netanyahu himself, on the one hand, after Jordan, where he promised to put a freeze on the settlements, right after he himself came out with a statement saying this will not come to full terms. So he is very much, Netanyahu is caught between international criticism and the world, and the more